This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
At Pepe Sayer, we focus on quality. So if someone comes into your restaurant and they see you're using Pepe Sayer, they know immediately that that is a quality product you've got in front of you on the table. And that comes from a decade of just doing quality butter day after day.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
Because of where we are and I suppose what we're doing, you know, you've just got people from all over the world coming in and the story's going far and wide, you know, and it's a great feeling to think, well, you know, my ideas actually come to fruition.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Australia is such a huge landmass. It encompasses just about all climates and conditions, meaning just about any produce can thrive somewhere across the land. In the tropics, particularly Darwin and the Northern Territory, the temperature is consistently warm and humid and an incredible environment for some of the most stunning ingredients in the world. What's it like as a chef immersing yourself in a region like this? Martin Bouchier is the chef patron of Phat Mango in Darwin CBD. Martin, how are you?
Good morning, how are you?
Good. You've cooked all over the world, but find yourself in tropical Darwin. What was it like when you first arrived there?
Warm. I ended up in the Northern Territory sort of by mistake about 10 years ago. Somebody offered me a trial for 2 weeks and said, do you want to come to Darwin and have a trial? And I went, well, I've not been to Darwin before. So I got on the plane. I was down in Adelaide Hills at the time, working there, and got on the plane, middle of the night. I had a mud map as to where I was going to be staying. I got off the plane, and it was like the heat just hit. It was humid. It was hot. It was dark. I tripped over a cane toad. First time I'd ever come across one of them. It was, and I thought, what the hell have I come to? 10 years later, here we are, still here, owning my own restaurant, having worked around the traps, as it were. Got my own little place and love it. Absolutely adore it. I think what it's got up here is just unique. You know, you're 5 minutes away from the bush, you're 5 minutes away from the ocean. The people are really chilled out. You don't have the craziness that we have down in, I mean, I'm lucky enough I get to get out of Darwin every now and then and go down to Melbourne or Sydney, or now the borders are back open. We get to go international as well. We're an hour and a half from Bali. You know, it's closer to get to Bali than it is to get to Melbourne. So it's pretty cool to go and have a long weekend away, you know, but love the place. Beautiful, beautiful country, beautiful people, beautiful produce.
Tell us a little bit about the food scene and restaurant offering in Darwin.
It's got an awful lot better. Like 10 years ago, it was salt and pepper squid, overcooked steaks, chicken palmies, and that was. But lots of Asian food, which was quite new to me. Great Vietnamese, Chinese, Malay, Singaporean, a real good melting pot. And what's happened over the last 10 years? It's got more and more cosmopolitan. We've got some brilliant restaurants in town now that. You know, one of the reasons I opened Phat Mango is because I wanted to make a change to the food scene and do something where people weren't just going out to put calories in the belly, you know. It's like go out and experience dining as I used to remember it when I was a kid. When we used to eat out and about in the UK and around Europe, and, you know, you spend hours eating. And I wanted to do something like that. So the food scene's got a lot more cosmopolitan up here. Like I say, there's some brilliant places now. And what we're doing, producing we even changed the name to Cuisine Australiana, because I I hate that phrase modern Australian, because it's about as old as me now. You know, it was coined years and years and years ago to signify something. I don't know. I genuinely don't know what the classification was. All my old bosses, whenever I was over here, said, "Oh, we need to write a new menu, please. Can you do something modern Australian?" And I couldn't work out what it was, you know, because everything was a robbed idea from another country. You know, a parmy is an eggplant parmy from Italy. You know, we've got Lebanese food that we use. We've got fish and chips that, you know, you guys in Australia robbed from the UK allegedly. You know, or the Kiwis claim ownership to it, but there was nothing that was traditionally Australian. So that's how we came about. So I wanted to buy this great produce we've got up here, and only use Australian ingredients, only use Australian flavours to develop food. So over the last 10 years, there's a lot more places doing that now.
There's some pretty special ingredients up in the region that you're in. Is there anything that sort of has stood out for you in your time there that's become a real feature of your cooking as a result of you being in Darwin?
Oh, the list's endless. You know, not just the greens, the Asian greens that we pick up regularly at the markets at Rapid Creek. You know, mangoes. Like we produce something like 80% plus of the nation's mangoes up here in Darwin. So, you know, we use a lot of that, especially now they're in season. So we've got about 8 or 9 different varieties of mango that we use for different things. And we use the whole thing. You know, we dehydrate the skin, we roast the stones, we make our own orgeats, make our own liqueurs with it. So you get zero wastage. We make gels and purees and syrups and all sorts of bits and bobs, all from that one piece of fruit. But each mango has its own flavourings, you know. So we've got like Nockdams and R2E2s, KPs, etc., etc., etc. And they've all got their own little eccentricities. But one of the great ingredients that we use up here, we use a lot of green ants of all things, which cost a fortune, in fairness. So we were buying them from the guys out at Manningrida. So over in Arnhem Land, there's a community up there, Manningrida, and they were foraging for us. So Layla and Don, the elders, used to organise everybody, and we'd get things like badger radish and bush potatoes and all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and play with them, with the flavours. But they also supplied us with the green ants. But then we decided at $500 a kilo. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ants in a kilo of ants, but we'd forage them off the trees, you know, because they're indigenous and local to around here. So we cleaned most of my garden out of the ants' nests. We left a couple, so it became sustainable, you know, and then friends and just the various gardens, and because they're everywhere, you know, down the golf course, and you know, you'd go down there with a plastic bag and put the ants' nests in, freeze them down, put them in torpor, then separate them all out with the eggs and the, you know, all the various worker ants, and then we'd use them because the thorax is amazing. But then, of course, you've got, you know, people using that all over the country now, making gin out of it. Danny Motlop, a local lad, you know, makes a great green ant gin, you know, and that's got a few floating around. But yeah, so that was one of the great ingredients. And then, you know, you've got about 20 different wattles that we use. There's the list's endless, you know.
Oh, I want to go back to green ants for a second. How do you use them? Is there a dish or two that you do that sort of exemplifies how to get the best out of them?
Well, we made an ant's nest, and it became a bit of a signature dessert. So it was we created a red centre dirt, which was just a chocolate caramel and sort of dehydrated raspberry. We made that into a dirt. We had a white chocolate shell sort of half spear shell, and then in that we made a mango curd and a lime curd, and we put that into the gel, made a little bit of coral, again using the radish, and then garnished it with green ants. But then we changed that to make it a bit Jurassic Parkish. So we put the ants into like a clear caramel, basically, so it looked like amber. That was pretty cool. That was a great little dish, and we've had some great publicity over that. That's gone international. We've got guys like Simon Calder coming from the UK, bringing a film crew. We've got an American film crew that's been in. We've had a couple of sort of local, the Channel 10s and the Channel 7s have been down and gone over it. It really took off. But then we've got other weird ones now. So, you can't keep things the same all the time. So we've produced a dish now using crocodile tongue. That's pretty funky. And I was down in Melbourne showcasing that the other week. So we just, miso soak it, and it's like a miso brine that we use, and then that goes char grill, and we make a sort of potato and caraway style cream sauce, and then a bush tomato oil that we use with it as well. So I think the list's endless when it comes down to local ingredients, but I love to use things that make people go, and they don't quite understand it. And they don't quite get it, but then when they taste it, you just get that expression over their face of, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And I think that's the work of a chef. To be honest with you, I think that's what we're here for. We're not just here to burn things and put them on a plate. It's sort of an alchemy, turning a product into something absolutely special. And to me, that's always been the job. Everywhere I've ever been, we've tried to do that. But I love what I'm doing at the moment. Absolutely passionate about it. It's great.
Well, I want to explore a little bit later on a bit more what you're doing with Phat Mango and helping evolve the culinary scene up there in Darwin. But take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family when you were a kid?
Oh, well, I'm fifth generation hospo. We grew up in pubs and restaurants, and I remember working with my mum in the kitchen. Oh God, I must have been 6 or 7, I suppose, and we were doing bits and bobs. Back in the day, like my grandparents were the first in Cheshire, which was my home state in the UK, to do pub food. It's back in the days when it used to be like a pickled egg or a pickled onion or a manky old pie from the bakery down the, on the back shelves that's probably stood there for a week. And then they started doing food in a basket. There's like chicken chips in a basket, scampi back in those days, which was monkfish, of course, because nobody knew what to do with the monkfish. So scampi in the UK, breaded nuggets and monkfish and chips, sausage and chips, things like that. My mum was one of the first to have a microwave back in the UK. That was, that would be back in the very early 70s. And doing things. It was, so yeah, I always grew up around food. When we used to go out on school trips, and people would take their little lunch boxes with them on the school trip. Everybody got the cheese sandwiches and the ham sandwiches and the egg sandwiches and whatever. And I was one of them. I'd go with potted shrimps, and things like that. And we'd have some great, awesome food coming out of the restaurants that we had at the pubs and the hotels. So yeah, they were great memories. Going to Ironbridge Gorge in the UK. It was a real old industrial park. I was probably about 11, 10, something like that. And then, I got these potted shrimps. It was, good fun. Good fun days.
Your career in the UK, you did many things, but what were the real highlights for you in your time there?
Oh, so we set up. One of the great things we did was there's a food festival in the UK called Chester Food and Drink. And 21 years ago, I set that up with a couple of mates, and we did it basically in the church hall. There was a couple of tables and a couple of producers. And that's now one of the biggest food shows in the UK. Over every Easter, it's down in Chester. And they took over the racecourse. So Chester Racecourse, the oldest racecourse in the UK. And there's different stage areas, and working along people like Michael Caines and Simon Rimmer and James Martin and people like that doing things. There was a young lad, I remember being on stage, and we were interviewing. I'd flown over from we were in Spain at the time, so I'd flown over from Spain to do the show. And we were on stage interviewing this young lad, a lad called Dion Jones. He was one of the first Brits to win the Escoffier. There's so many great competitions around the world, but he ended up with a Roux scholarship. So Albert and Michel Roux doing this scholarship, and he worked with them for a while, and he's now running his own kitchens in Cheshire, and making a really big name for him. And I think that was his first competition. So I always keep an eye on people I've come across. Like all my juniors from back in the day, my waiting on staff, that came to me at 14 and 15 years of age, and I still keep in touch with them now, and it's 30 odd years down the line. Some are married and kids, and some have gone off to do other great things, and some are still in the industry. A couple own their own restaurants. I think that's a real privilege of what I do. I think the following on, the sort of mentorship, which I still do nowadays. But I think those are the great memories of, from those days back in Farndon in Chester. And then, just seeing where they are now, that's a cool thing.
You spent about a decade in Spain, but what triggered the move for you to Spain?
I burnt out, basically. I was doing too much. You were up in the morning going to the markets, Liverpool and Manchester market, and you were still in the kitchen at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night sometimes. And they were just long days. And, back in those days, we didn't really look after ourselves. So you were I was putting 70, 80 hours a week in on a regular basis. And it just got too much. And we were doing very well, as a business. The restaurant was doing very well. And I ended up buying Mum and Dad a property in Spain. Because they like Spain, and we'd got this little apartment villa over there, and I started going over there on little breaks just to try and get everything together. And basically one day went across the road, and there was this Merendero. So Merendero is like a beach restaurant over the road, and you go there. There's a great, beautiful beach. Peñoncio Playa in Torrox, and he went over there, and we had a bottle of rosé, and then we had another bottle of rosé, and we had some sardines on sticks, and called espetos, and some paella, and a bit of ham on, and another bottle of rosé, and about 5 bottles of rosé in between me and my mates. I got chatting to the guy who owned this Merendero, and in a bit of a drunken silliness said, "Do you want to sell?" And he went, "Yeah." And we basically did the deal there and then, shook hands on it. 6 weeks later, we were over, I'd sold the restaurant in the UK, and we went over to over to Spain, and I didn't speak a word of Spanish, which was the stupid thing. So, my Spanish was una cerveza, por favor, and a really, really poor accent. And then the first weekend, like the Malagueñas, so all the people from Malaga City used to come down to the beach, and we were 6 and 8 deep at the bar, with people shouting for coffees. And there's like, you think Melbourne's good for coffee, you want to try Andalusia. There is about 14 different variants, all based on how many milliliters of espresso is in the cup. So you use the same size cup, a demi-tasse, and there's about 14 different variants in there, from a tiny sip of straight coffee to a nube, which is a cloud, which is the cup full of milk, and then the tiniest bit of coffee just to colour it up. And when you didn't really know the language and you didn't know the styles of coffee, that made it hard work on sort of week one. There was a lad there, the local Spanish guy, and I went, "Oi, get behind this bar and give us a hand." So, on he jumps, all Francie, and then we managed to serve everybody, and we didn't look back. It was so from there, and I learnt the language very quickly. Because if you don't speak the language of the locals, then you don't take a euro, and if you don't take a euro, you don't stay there very long. So I learned that one. You've got to be local. You've got to look after local, and you've got to be able to talk their language, no matter what that language is. And I learned Spanish fairly quickly by only going into the Spanish bars and sitting at the bar and listening to the locals talk, and then getting involved in the locals. And we got the old Spanish mafia over there, and you get involved with them, and at 4 o'clock in the morning you're coming back out of the bar and the sun's coming up, as it were. It was quite interesting times. But then GFC hit. And the global financial crisis basically wiped me out, which is a shame. We had some good years there, making paella on the beach and the freshest fish. There was an old guy, Salvador, used to row his boat out. His boat was always on the beach where we were, and he'd row his boat out. The guy was about 80. He'd row out about 1 kilometre and drop his net and row it round in a circle and handball everything in. And that was my fish of the day, So he'd come in and basically pour the buckets into the sink, and that's where we had our fish. So it's literally from the doorstep. So provenance in everything, the old campesinos coming down the mountains with the literally donkey and cart, and buying tomatoes and capsicums off them, and all the great local produce that there was there, making gazpacho with the most beautiful tomatoes. Just great memories.
What sort of impact did the GFC have on you personally with the closure of your business?
Oh, it was a mess. We probably lost about £1 million. With the development of what we'd done on the bars and everything else. So literally lost everything, lost the house, lost the business, ended up scrabbling around for money with people I knew, like €50 here, ended up doing things like karaoke and stuff, anything to make money, and living in the back of a van. It was hard. It was really hard. But I think you learn things from that as well. It's learn to just get on. Every day you wake up and you're still breathing is a good day. And things always move round and always get better. And but yeah, we were doing. I was writing menus for people. We were going in. I was going and doing like a day's work in one bar because everybody was in the same boat. There was no money. So operating on a barter system. Working a day just to get a meal. things like that. To have a couple of beers, and you'd do a day in the kitchen or write some menus, or and we all sort of rallied together. But I went on, because Facebook was invented then. I went on Facebook and said, "Somebody give me a job." And there was a guy I'd met over in Australia, in Adelaide, that we were there at the cricket. So I came over, barmy army, and sat there on the hill at Adelaide Oval before it was all built up for AFL and stuff like that now. But yeah, we sat there and, watched Michael Vaughan and Brett Lee bowling at him and Glenn McGrath catching him and, Freddie Flintoff and all the greats back in the day. But I'd met this guy there, Steve, who owned a pub in Adelaide Hills. And he got on me because there were skill shortages back then. And he got on me, said, we can't find a chef. And I went, well, I'm a chef. So he went, okay, well, I'll do the paperwork. And he flew me over here on a 457. So I got over here on a visa. So came Qantas, the longest route I have ever known of any plane. Took me damn near 2 days to get over here through Hong Kong and all over the place. So I flew from Spain back to Manchester. I saw my parents for a day and said, by the way, yeah, I'm off to Australia. And I landed here and I've got 200 bucks in my pocket and a suitcase with 23 kilos in it. And that was literally all I had left in the world.
Tell us about that time of landing here. Did you approach your craft differently, given the circumstances that you had come from? Did it have an impact on the way you saw your career and move forward? Well,
I just needed to stay alive, basically. So it was a case of doing what people wanted to be done. So, I landed, and there's a guy called Carey Evans, who's nearest thing to family that's not blood related. So he's known me pretty much all my life, and he was in Adelaide. So he put me up, and I stayed with him, and he picked me up at the airport. And we still laugh and joke about it now, coming up that ramp, just a broken man, And so we got there, and I got up into the hills, and we went to the place called the Blumberg, real beautiful pub. It's got an old 1920s truck stuck out of the ceiling, so hanging like typical hills pub, really, or one of these iconic pubs of Australia. And there's this truck is literally stuck out the second floor of the pub, and it's the old verandas and everything. Classic picture of an Aussie country pub. And and they were doing the salt and pepper squid and the sniddies and the steaks and the standard fare, and that's what the country folk wanted. And you learn to do what the customer wants, So I did that for 2 years, and thousands of schnitzels and tons of squid and tons of steak, but still managing to go out to the farmers market. There was a farmers market started down the road, and there was another one down in Harndorf. So we used to go down there and get produce and try and put some specials on for the guys, but you can never get away from the standard staples there. And I think that's it's there, and then coming up here and working some of the pubs and stuff around here, and same menus, salt, pepper, squid, sniddies, snitty after snitty after snitty after snitty. I actually swore that when I got my own restaurant that we'd never do another schnitzel. And in fairness, we haven't. There's I don't agree with things being thrown into breadcrumbs and deep fried. That's not my sort of food. Thank you. But yeah, no, it was good times, and and it got me back. It got me back, and we used to having great days off. because of where it was. We used to go to Barossa and go to the Adelaide Hills wineries, on a day off. And cruise around, and I got to know some of the wineries and some of the people from down there, Barossa, Adelaide Hills, McLaren Vale, and what have you, Clare Valley. They're on my wine list now, and I know the winemakers well, and they come up from Adelaide every now and then, and we'll sit and have a dinner with them, or we'll do a dinner with them. Or I still get to travel down there because the missus's family's from the hills as well, so she's a Lobethal girl. So we have to go down and visit the in-laws and the outlaws every now and then. So we get down there, but you can make it a business trip and go to a couple of wineries, so it's always good.
Tell us about the idea and creation of Phat Mango.
So, yeah, I sort of spat my dummy a little bit. I've been around up in Darwin then for probably 8 or 9 years going. We've only been open for 2 years. And it was like I was just tired of doing the same thing for the same people, and everybody making money out of it. And as we all know, there's no real money in restaurants. But I just wanted to do my own thing. I was winning Provenance Awards back in the UK. We were winning awards for seasonality and the quality of the produce and the provenance. And I wanted to do the same thing up here. I'd been up here and with the Culinary Federation that I'm involved with, and I get to know the producers. And there's some brilliant farms up here. Eva Valley producing great beef, and there's the Croc Farm. There's loads and loads and loads of things, and producers all around Australia. There's a guy called Jason produces pigs down in Port Lincoln. Great, absolutely brilliant pigs that we get up here and we use, and you just got to know all these producers, and I wanted to put them on the menu. And that's pretty much how Phat Mango came about, because I was working in a place. I'd set up a cafe for disability services, so to train and help people with disability get into our industry. And I was involved in there, but it was so corporate that I wasn't enjoying what we were doing. And it was, we had to have a meeting about having a meeting to sort something out, that sort of mentality. And I'm old school chef, get it done. So yeah, I didn't really get on with that. And I sort of spat my dummy one day, and there was this place available, and good location, reasonable fit out in there. So I think it was about the August of 2020. We were in COVID, but the NT didn't suffer as much as, say, Melbourne did or Sydney did. But we were in the middle of COVID, and it was August, and I went, you know what, sod this, I'm going to buy and do my own place. So we did, and then 1st of October, so it took me 8 weeks to get it clean, get it done, get the suppliers sorted, get everything done, get the team around me. And yeah, we opened the door on the 1st of October. So we're just coming up to our 2nd year, literally this next few weeks. So we'll have a party, we'll crack a bottle probably. It'd be rude not to, wouldn't it? And that's how Phat Mango came about. It was the idea has been in my notebook for years. Fat stemming from, Fat Tuesday over in the States. We were going over there for Mardi Gras many, many years ago. I liked that phrase of Fat Tuesday. And then fat being an acronym for pretty hot and tempting sort of worked. And mango because it's synonymous with the NT. And it was going to be a funky little cafe, was the original idea. And then it turned into this behemoth of a restaurant. that there's no going back from now. It's cool. We've got a funky vibe in there. There's a story for every ingredient. Even the furniture. So we redeveloped the bar. We had Cyclone Marcus up here a few years ago, and a lot of trees came down. Mahogany trees and rainforest, rain tree, wood all came down. And the government had got a grant thing going, and I went, you know what, we'll have a little bit of that. So we spent 20 grand on mahogany and redeveloped the bar, and it was all the scents that had come down from Cyclone Marcus. So people, there's even a story to sit at the bar. And, we've got some beautiful artwork there. There's one of my customers has made this awesome saltwater crocodile out of paper bark. And that she sits on the back bar amongst all the bottles from, great distillers around Australia, because all the back bar's Australian as well. So every spirit, we actually got our first agave a couple of weeks ago. So we've been trying to get every spirit that you can think of in an Australian format. We found an agave and an añejo as well. So we've now got two agave spirits on the back bar amongst all the gins and the whiskies and the rums and the vodkas and the brandies, and everything's Australian. But she is the name of the crocodile, which means it's a foreign word for death. And she sits over the bar watching everything that goes on. And we got some beautiful artwork on the walls from Indigenous artists. A guy called Reggie Sultan that comes in all the time. He's got pictures in Canberra in Government House. But he's also got pictures on our wall, which are available for people to buy. And then that's all mixed and matched with all the crazy awards we've won in the last 2 years. Just interspersed all over the place. A few gold plates, a few restaurant caterers awards. We've got seafood awards. We got some from the UK. For international restaurants, which is pretty cool. And because of where we are and I suppose what we're doing, you've just got this plethora of people, and now the borders are open again. Like people from all over the world coming in, and the story's going far and wide, and it's a great feeling to think, well, my ideas actually come to fruition. I don't know where it's going to lead and don't know what's going to happen. It'd be really cool if one of the big chains decided to buy the name off me and give me millions of dollars and put it into hotels around the country. That would be cool. And there's provenance everywhere. There's down in the hill, down in Adelaide, there's great produce. Over in Queensland, there's great produce. Over in Perth, there's great produce. What we're doing is very Territorian, but very Territorian. And it's just really funky to do. Maybe one day there'll be, what we're going to call it, a fat marron or a fat whale or a fat banana, or depending on which state we're in. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that's been proven to me, that you never know what the future's going to bring. When I was in the UK, I didn't know I was going to go to Spain. When I was in Spain, I didn't know that the world was going to collapse. Then we came over to Australia with nothing, and now I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky. I do get to travel around the country. We get to showcase what we're doing. It's phenomenal. I've just taken a role on as the chairman for the Olympic culinary squad, so Team Australia. Which is great. So we're raising money to take a group of guys over, and girls obviously, over to initially Luxembourg for the World Cup. which is going to be in November, and then we've got Singapore and Malaysia to go to, but ultimately to the Culinary Olympics in Stuttgart in 2024. So, when I'm down showcasing crocodile tongue on a crumpet, for example, then we're also talking to some of the big industry players and saying, do you want to be involved and look after us and, sponsor us or fund us or donate to us? And, that's a really cool thing. So we're doing the next generation of cooks and chefs. Because I think if it's not for things like that, and if it's not for competitions and people stretching the mentality and, learning the craft, then, by the time I end up in the nursing home, we're just going to be eating slop out of the bag. It's the future of chefing's hard as it is. But we're changing a lot of the mentalities behind old school chef. I mean, I remember being a youngster working in kitchens, and head chef would throw a knife across the kitchen and it'd twang in the door frame next to me, and he'd spit his dummy every now and then and throw whole breads and them smashing on the wall behind us, and then being told to clean it up just because he'd been a bit petulant. And those days, thankfully, are few and far between now, and that's something else that we've done with the restaurant is not smashing people for hours. My guys work 40 hours a week, that's it, on a 5-day week, so we close for 2 days. We don't work bank holidays. We have 2 weeks off at Christmas. I've done 40 plus years of working in kitchens and restaurants and never had Christmas and New Year off. So that was one of the things I wanted to do. So we closed on the last practical day before Christmas Eve. So this year is going to be the 23rd, and we're not open again until the 5th of January. And the whole team gets to have time off. But we'll have everybody around the house, and we'll have make a paella in the back, and do some stuff, and get together and have a few drinks. But it's about having that time off to be with family. We've got people in this industry that are from other parts of the world. They get a chance to go home and visit their family. That's what the industry should be doing. And I think that's what the industry missed the boat a little bit over COVID. It didn't look after our own, unfortunately. And I think that's one of the several reasons that we're in the mess at the minute. But you can only do your own little bit, at the end of the day. It's, no matter what we do, you've got to be true to yourself, and that's my truth, so that's what we try and do.
Well, Martin, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today. I know you've got so many more stories, so please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
I would absolutely love to. Loved every minute of this.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.